Hello, welcome to Dr. Jeff Talks About Sex and Intimacy, the podcast where we explore anything and everything relevant to sexual health, relationships, and intimacy. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you're here live or you're watching the recording for episode 42, Sexual Empowerment Beyond Purity Culture. I just want to take a moment to thank you for being here. Know that you are the reason this podcast exists. There are no hidden agendas. We are here because we want to empower and enlighten you. So thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I just want to take a moment to honor and acknowledge everyone who is living with breast cancer or is a breast cancer survivor. It has been such an honor and privilege to be a part of your journey in my practice with patients. And we just want to salute you in this Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We are out there on social media. We're out there on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're on X. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Kick. We're out there. If you're on X and you have a question, go to YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Kick, or StreamYard to give us those questions. We're happy to give them to our guests today. And if you are a Facebook person, we're always looking for more followers because the more followers we have, the more we can do on Facebook. So please follow us if you're a Facebook person. Go to the website. The website has all of the incredible past episodes that you can watch. There are 41. Now there will be 42 of them. You can pull up the calendar and see what's coming up next. But the website has each of those episodes you can watch. You can watch them on YouTube and other places too, but the website's a very easy place to find the episodes and watch them, as well as the calendar of what's coming up next. Listen to us in your car while you're working out. We are there with your favorite streaming service like Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, wherever you are, whether you're exercising or you're riding in the car on a long trip, take us along. We're happy to be there on the journey with you. I'd just like to remind you that all are welcome here in this space. Whatever your sexual orientation, your gender identity, or your relationship style, we are so happy that you chose to join us, and you are completely and totally welcome here. So welcome. The goal of the podcast is pretty simple. It is just simply to empower and enlighten you with the evidence base, that's the scientific information you need to make informed decisions to improve your sexual health and to deepen your relationship with the people that you love. So you can live and love more fully and authentically. And that's what our hope and prayer for you is. So thank you. Today's episode, I am really excited about today's episode. We previously did a similar episode on this, but we're diving into an often hidden wound that deeply shapes people's relationships, sexuality, and sense of self, religious trauma. For many, early messages about shame, sin, and the body can leave lasting imprints that affect how we see ourselves and how we connect with others. My guest today is Ann Russo. Today, we'll explore what religious trauma looks like, how it impacts intimacy and sexual expression, and how we can move towards healing and self-compassion, which is really what spirituality and religion, many of it, is much truly about. So, Ann Russo is a licensed clinical social worker, a theologian, and the creator of the Religious Trauma Treatment Model, RTTM, a pioneering evidence-informed approach for treating the psychological and relational effects of religious trauma. With over 2 decades of experience in clinical practice, Ann's work bridges psychology, spirituality, and trauma recovery. Her model provides therapists and clients with a roadmap to address the layered impacts of indoctrination, shame, and spiritual abuse on identity, sexuality, and relationships. a sought-after speaker and educator. Ann trains clinicians worldwide and advocates for trauma-informed, compassionate care, which we've talked quite a bit before on this podcast about. And so Ann's commitment to integrity and Ann's commitment to integrating spirituality and science invites people to rediscover a sacred connection to their bodies, desires, and inner wisdom, beyond fear and control, towards freedom and love. I could not be more excited to welcome our guest, Ann Russo. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Dr. Jeff. Thank you so much. And thank you for that lovely introduction. Can I just say that I was jealous of that cool car? I was like, I want that car.
I know, right? That's, Vic, who is our producer, just does amazing things. He produced that song. He's always got fun things in store for us. But yeah, I want that car too. I definitely do.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here and to talk today to you and the audience and just enjoy a great conversation.
Definitely. And this is a topic that listeners asked about, and we did a previous episode on, but it's so important. We wanted to do another one, and I'm really excited. We talked beforehand, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say. So I'm going to turn it over to you. It's all you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for being here today to talk about reclaiming sexual agency. There is so much to talk about when we're talking about sexual empowerment, religion. I didn't even know where to start today. So my focus is more on purity culture and purity culture scripts and how to have value aligned desire. So I'm going to move through this presentation hopefully within the next 15 minutes or so, because I'm really excited to get to conversations and questions. Let's go. So, what it's not, and I think it's really important to know that we are looking at faith messages, how they shape sex, desire, and worth. We're looking at a space to find language, choice, and self-trust, tools for living our values in our bodies and honoring our stories and our histories and our experiences. We are not debating religion. This is not an anti-church and anti-faith presentation. We're not telling you how to live and what to believe is right or wrong. This is about providing information to empower you in your sexuality. Today, I'm hoping that you'll gain understanding how purity culture shapes female sexuality, but I want to add a caveat there. We're also going to talk about sexuality in general and the impact in purity culture. Because oftentimes, while yes, purity culture does impact female sexuality more overtly, it still does impact male sexuality and transsexuality. Language to name inherited messages. So we're going to talk a little about the messages that we may receive, whether we participate in church, specifically Christianity, because this is where purity culture comes from. And are those messages ours, or do they come from our culture as a whole that happens to be very Christian, or our Christian upbringing? We're looking at strategies to build sexual agencies within a spiritual framework. So we're the path forward: integration, clarity, and pleasure. So let's just start with some simple definitions because, in talking to people and working as a therapist, one thing that I find most challenging is we start having a conversation here, but we haven't really defined the terms. So we could end up thinking we're both talking about the same thing, and in actuality, we're talking about something completely different and understanding something differently, right? So sexual agency, we're understanding that as the ability to understand, choose, and express your own desires and sexual limits. Christianity, a faith-centered teaching of Jesus, emphasizing love, grace, and integrity. And inherited messages, which is ideas absorbed through family, church, and culture about sex and gender. These messages are often accepted as true before we even question them. It's like we accept oxygen that we breathe before we really understand what oxygen is. And that's the same with messages oftentimes around our sexuality. What is purity culture? So, purity culture, believe it or not, is a fairly modern movement, and it rose really around the 1980s and 1990s. And it's a movement linking moral worth to sexual behavior. Yes, it promotes abstinence before marriage, but the key component here, which is often different than the Christian sexual ethics, is your worth as a human being is tied to your sexual behavior. This is typically taught in youth groups, in books, even in school programs and family messaging. There were camps that a lot of my clients had been to in the 90s, even into the early 2000s, where specifically the women go and or the young girls go and they receive purity rings where they promise to not have sex before marriage, right? So they literally wear a ring to symbolize that, and there is a ritual and ceremony behind it. There's some great documentaries as well on purity culture. We can obviously talk about that later. I'm happy to share links. So some of you, may be looking at this and going, I'm still a Christian and I believe very much in sexual ethics or waiting till marriage. And that's why I wanted to talk about this, because I feel like it's really important that we honor the belief of that some may hold virginity till marriage or having a more discreet sexuality. So I want to talk a bit about what is purity culture versus Christian sexual ethics. So purity culture is shame based. So you're shamed into not being sexual, and then you're shamed if you are sexual, which takes a tremendous hit on mental health, self worth, and overall well being. In Christian sexual ethics, it's a grace and dignity approach. If you believe to wait and you don't wait, you're not shamed to the point of a mental health breakdown, but you are receiving grace and you are dignified as a human being. Purity culture, policing girls and women's bodies. How do you dress? How are you acting? It's very much becomes about what the woman should or shouldn't do to even tempt men, looking at it from a heteronormative perspective. So, Christian ethics, respecting bodily autonomy for everyone. No one's body is being policed by another. Worth, again, tied to sexual status versus worth is God given and constant. Your worth is not taken away based on a sexual decision as a human being or part of your connection or relationship with God. Silence about sex and bodies. That's a particularly important one, especially when we look at the abstinence movements and then the we don't talk about sex, we don't talk about bodies. And studies actually show that when we're not talking about sex, we're not talking about bodies, we're not talking about health, sexual health, at age appropriate ways, this leads to more STIs. It leads to more unwanted pregnancies and more shame and lack of worth. I'll get into that a little bit more later. Fear of desire. I can go into that in the question period a little bit more, but that is something that I see a lot with my clients, that it doesn't just impact them psychologically, but it actually impacts their bodies. Their bodies become literally unable to perform sexually, and that goes for both men and women. We're looking to have honest, age appropriate, open conversations, right? Like, and then seeing desire as normal, guided by wisdom. So that can mean that we do talk about abstinence till marriage. We do talk about safe sex. We're guided by it's okay. These are normal human desires. What do we do with them with our own values and ethics system? All or nothing rules in purity culture. You're ruined if you are sexual. And then also the double standard. And while again, I want to reiterate that all genders are impacted, there is a lot of double standard when it comes to cisgender male and female. With Christian sexual ethics, one standard of consent for all genders. So let's look a little bit more about the actual impact that purity culture has. Now, this is all evidence-based practice, research. So this is not just something I'm making up. This is what we actually see. More unplanned pregnancies where schools push the abstinence only. Higher sexual shame. Lower sexual pleasure. Difficult to talk about needs and boundaries. Delays cares from pain and trauma, and that can be sexual abuse, sexual assault. It can be any situation that involves genitals or just taking care of your overall sexual health and a sexual reproductive system. Scrupulosity, meaning an obsession around sexuality and sex and desire. And the good girls don't ask barrier, meaning we're not looking to have pleasure within sex ourselves. We don't understand our sexual desires and our sexual nature as women, so we just end up having sex that is devoid of pleasure and feels more like responsibility. For men, less likely to name, coercion, or assault. And what I mean by that is men aren't taught boundaries around sexuality either. So because of that, they understand women are not supposed to, in purity culture, be sexual, which gives them the idea that they can push those boundaries and those limits. So they're not even understanding when they're entering into a coercion or assault situation with a woman. They also have shame around their own desires, erectile issues, and performance anxieties. Those are more specific to women and men. Mutual impact, fuzzy consent. What does it even mean to consent to sex? Even going further, enthusiastically consenting to sex. Body disconnection, relationship strain, spiritual distress. I am bad replaces I am loved. And those messages don't change when people enter into the contract of marriage, right? So purity culture says you enter into the contract of marriage, then you can be sexual. Well, those messages have already been put in your brain, in your body, so intensely, right? That you're not really able to just bounce back from a message like that. So you're there, you enter into a phase of fear of pleasure. One mistake feels like a failure. Avoids real talk about sex and faith. Blurry boundaries, feeling sometimes as though faith and the self can't even exist together. And then the secrecy cycle, unsafe in faith or intimate spaces. Again, not talking about sexuality, not talking about masturbation, not talking about healthy desire. Then trying to move into an intimate space where those things may be taking place, or maybe desires or kinks that are explored, but then you're embarrassed by those. So it's like you're just in the cycle of trauma when it comes to your sexuality and your faith. So breaking the rules, breaking yourself, using contraception less, just an entire lack of knowledge and awareness, which of course harms mental health. So one of the things that I think that is important to understand about this is these messages are not new. So I'm going to pull on my theologian brain here for a moment. And I focus more on women here because women, as I said earlier, have been more impacted by purity culture and these rules around female sexuality. And as you can see, in Christianity, when Jesus passed away, you had folks for the first 300 years trying to really understand what it meant to be a Christian. And these folks are known as the founding fathers of the church. And then that was through Catholicism. And then in the later centuries, Catholicism started breaking out into different groups of Christianity, where you also had thinkers that were starting to formulate what it means to be a Lutheran, a Protestant, a Baptist. So these are some statements, and these are firsthand statements from these folks. As you can see, they're quoted. You can pull up their work even now, where they speak about sexuality, and specifically women's sexuality, as something shameful or bad. So, as you can see, the formulation of the Christian faith was a negative view about sexuality to begin with. So it's no wonder that these messages exist for us today as followers of Christianity. This is left over from the foundation of the building of the faith. As you can see, I have put a few more here because I think it's really important to just understand how not only are we talking about sexuality, but we're also talking about the woman as virgin and how it's to be understood how to be part of sexuality. So even in Jerome, you see that he's talking about even loving your own wife too much, you become an adulterer. So the messages around sexuality were very difficult for, for folks raised up in Christianity. I'm trying to move through this stuff quick because I'm excited to talk more. But as you can see, like there is sexual purity that's really existed throughout Christianity. So, like I said, the early church really focused on chastity and celibacy. And then is the strong focus on sin and desire and being blamed for the fall of man and virginity being praised. This isn't coming from the words of Jesus. This is coming from the people that were trying to understand what it meant to be a Christian in different time periods, right? So the councils, rules grow around sex, sexual sin. Medieval Virgin Mary ideal rises. The idea of the virgin is the best woman possible, right? And then we have the puritanical culture, tight control of sex, public penalties for immorality. The Great Awakening, preaching links female virtue to social order. The cult of domesticity, purity, modesty, silencing of women. As we enter in the 20th century, we're getting a bit more of a rise in debates around sexuality, fighting for feminist theology. But then we kind of step back a little bit in some area with the pledges, the rings I talked about earlier, the abstinence only. But now we're kind of in a place within theology, within Christianity, where we're looking more at re-examining texts. And we're doing that through trauma-aware care and consent and agency within the faith. So we're using the text, the Bible. We're using thinkers that formulated Christianity, and we're trying to understand a way to understand sex outside of just shame and sin and it being wrong or only being for procreation. And with that said, it's not, we don't have to think, oh, Christianity, all bad, sex, all bad, all shame. That is not true. There are people that have written from these places of the church fathers and different theologies within the Christian faith where they speak very positively about sex, sexual experiences, and even becoming closer to God through those sexual experiences. There's so much written here. This is just a taste of it. But if you're interested, I'm happy to provide notes where you can look into positive sexuality in relation to Christianity. Looking at inherited religious messages. So messages we learned about sex, gender, and worth, passed through sermons, families, books, purity pledges, and silence. So remember, inherited messages are not things that we necessarily believe and value as our most authentic self, but the messages that we received growing up. So feeling like truth, but often comes from culture and fear, not necessarily the faith itself. They shape how we think, how we choose, how we feel, how we agree, how we disagree, right? But we can heal this. And I think that is the most important part of understanding this is, yes, we've received these messages, but that doesn't mean that we're stuck in a place where we're frozen with our sexuality or frozen with the intersection of our faith and sexuality. Faith can be part of healing. Faith and body can belong together. And scripture do hold stories and courage of restoration. Desire can live inside a spiritual life, and agency fulfills faith through honesty and care. Healing grows when grace replaces shame. So, how do we get there, right? How do we get from I am bad to I am loved? Silence to safe, open conversation, open talk, from rules to wisdom, control to consent, fear to curiosity, obedience to integrity, and purity to wholeness. So these are just some quick strategies. Obviously, we can't do therapy here, but here are some things that if you're experiencing shame around your sexuality and you come out of purity culture, start to consider what consent as sacred, right? Rather than it being something wrong or bad. Ask, listen, check. What would feel good for me right now? We don't have to necessarily fix everything at the moment, but you're just learning about what feels safe and what feels good to you right now. Pray or journal about desires. Write one line to God about belonging. Building boundaries. Having words for those boundaries. Practice. Pause. Softer. Yes. Keep that. Starting to have those conversations with partners around sexuality and sexual desire and pleasure. And to create safety and aftercare. What do you need? If you have truly been harmed or traumatized within your faith system around sexuality, aftercare is something that is important because your body is learning how to have pleasure through shame and that harm. More strategies I have here is, seeing your body as spiritual, whether or not you subscribe to any particular faith. A 60-second body scan after a prayer or a meditation, or just taking a moment to pause and be with yourself. If you're part of a belief system, to really study the core of the culture and the belief and read those passages. This is stuff I would do in therapy. Then you list the church rules and you do a comparison. What truly is inherited? What is coming from a church? What is coming from the bigger faith piece? Name beliefs, feelings, choice. Say out loud, I was taught this, I feel this, and I can choose this. Slow your breath. Do it. I always suggest breath work because it's evidence-based work to help regulate your nervous system. So even though I put here 5 slow breaths, roll your shoulders, unclench your jaw, yes, if that works for you. But whatever breath exercises that you can do to help regulate your nervous system when you're thinking about sexuality or you're thinking about purity or opening yourself up to pleasure. Finding ways to unite faith, body, and desire. And again, if you're someone from the faith, pray while you're walking for 3 minutes. If you're not, meditate or find peace within yourself, whether it's a poem or a book or music, something that helps you regulate. Choose integrity, choose care, share a truth before intimacy starts. Find an aligned community. Attend a service that affirms consent and supports healthy sexuality. Trauma-informed sex therapy. Absolutely. And if you can, find someone who understands religion and purity culture and that type of upbringing, because having a therapist that is trauma-informed is very important, but having a therapist that can understand trauma and the trauma that can come out of purity culture. Let curiosity guide to clarify, right? Try one gentle thing, reflect, practice honest pleasure, pick sensations you enjoy and name them. That doesn't even have to be sexual things. It can just be learning how to enjoy your body and connect to your body again, because purity culture teaches us how to move away from our body. Body scan. I feel like I have a lot here because I just have a lot of different techniques. Um, oh, I actually did this one already, so we can actually move on. And let there be a new story for you about worth, about sexuality, language to name what shapes you, not the inherited language from your youth or from our culture. Faith and body back into conversation, trust, rebuild through honesty and care. Pleasure is part of spiritual life, living with integrity and not fear. That is my presentation. I try to get a lot in there, but I'm really excited to answer questions and have dialogue.
So much good stuff packed in there, Ann.
Trying to just pack it all in, Dr. Jeff.
I loved it. I loved it, and so much good strategies. I love all those different strategies, and then that message of integration, clarity, pleasure. I think that is really where we're headed with trying to feel better about things and try to get to a better healed place. So yeah. Yeah, I mean, it reminds me so much of the work we do with any trauma, this religious trauma. It's what we do with these trauma patients where we teach them how to challenge those negative thoughts. I always say, if anybody talked to you the way the voice in your head talks and people heard it, you'd call it abuse, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The voice in our head is brutal, and much of what it says is false because it's a culmination of past traumas and negativity speaking to us, right?
Yes, yes.
So it's learning that, challenging those thoughts and challenging those beliefs and emotions. And because what happens is it's like replaying that bad message, that bad mantra, that bad movie, and moving towards and replacing it with a positive mantra, positive messages. It's really difficult because I think the shame is such a big part of it.
Yeah.
Who is harder on us than us, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why, like you mentioned earlier in the religious trauma treatment model, the very first thing that we work on is body regulation. And I'm seeing here in one of the questions that you put up, how do I still have guilt in even a healthy sexual adult relationship? And then we're talking about body trauma.
Yeah. And that's exactly. And then you think that's why the different things that they did in the past is what got them through it, to dissociate, to get away from the trauma and the different feelings, but it pulled them out of their body. And you think the way they feel about their body, why would they want to be embodied and in their body?
Yes.
So again, it's unpacking, and I know that's not easy, listeners, but unpacking some of those difficult negative messages and things that you're hearing and where they came from and the roots of that. And then you don't want to live in that space. And then realizing that these are not your truths. They're not who you are. And your body is miraculous and beautiful and teaching you to be present and in your body again.
Yes. I can't help but think back to a group that I ran once about just sexual empowerment in general. And I always think back to one of the participants saying, this isn't just about owning my sexuality and learning how to be sexually empowered to have a good boundary. This is also about me learning how to give enthusiastic consent and enjoy my sexuality and enjoy sex and want sex. And I loved that because the focus of the group had really been about like being able to say no. And she brought in that other component of like how important it is to say yes.
Yeah. And I think too, teaching our patients and you as listeners, learning the right yes and the right no, because there's a space to say yes and there's a space to say no. And when you start making really good choices about correctness in your yes, things to say yes to, and correctness in your no and your boundaries, you start living a more wholehearted life.
Absolutely. And that's why, I think it's so important that when we talk about, for those that are practicing Christians, right? Or any faith, and there may be sexual ethics within that faith. And that's fine. And it's understanding, how are you connected to these sexual ethics? Where do they come from? How do you honor yourself in these sexual ethics? There is a lot of unpacking to do, right? Like it's not easy work when you are working on messages around sexuality and our culture and in our faith systems. But I think that if we can start to really, like you said, like what is mine? What is my belief? What is my value behind that belief? Am I practicing that? And even learning how to explore your own body, and what does it mean for you to have pleasure in your own body, even in the food that you eat, like taking a moment and enjoying the food that you eat. Are you even connected to your body in that way, right? Like, you can start in simple things. It doesn't have to be jumping into, like, I'm going to reclaim my sexuality at this very moment. It can be a process, and that's completely fine. But how do you start to enjoy bodily sensation?
That's such, it's so funny because I have a little note to myself to make sure to talk to you a little bit about. So, because then when you feel the shame and you feel the unworthiness, you don't think that you are worthy of pleasure, period.
Yes.
So it's learning to say, so when you begin, you don't have to be like, okay, I'm going to start with being, wildly sexual and all these things. You begin with, do I feel comfortable allowing myself to enjoy in terms of pleasure? And like you said, mindful eating. Wow, I love this particular food. Take time to really chew on that food, to taste that food, not just gulp it down and swallow it, but really mindfully be present with the food.
Yeah.
Again, that's a pleasure. That's a pleasure you're allowing yourself. And sometimes, like you, I find my patients are like, they can't even allow themselves simple pleasures like that.
Exactly. And you do move, like, I think of a client who I'm saying, okay, we've done this work around being more in your body. Are you ready? And this took about a year to get to this place, but
Mhm.
it was to go get a massage,
Yes.
and they went and they got a massage and they stayed in their body, which
Mm.
was amazing, because they were just could not, had such a fear of even being touched by another person.
Yeah.
Right. So we had to work on even like self massage. We had to work on food. We had to work on hugging friends, or it was a slow process to now they can go and they can get a body massage and they still stay regulated in their body. So we see the fruits of our work and the fruits of their work.
Each of those little steps too. And you think the first step is, because it's like, can I be present with touch? Like you said, start with touching yourself. I'm not in terms of genital touch, but I'm just saying massage, like start with touching your own shoulders, and you've got tension there, and just learning to be present with physical touch of your body. But what a remarkable threshold for your patient to overcome, to go have a massage
Truly.
and be present. Gosh, that's so cool.
I mean, I was just so impressed, because really it wasn't just like, okay, yeah, I'm going to work so hard at this. It was one step at a time, and
Yes.
being able to honor that one step at a time, that each step was an achievement. Like, it was moving towards a goal, and finally they got to reach that goal. And I think that that's something that's important too, is because when we're talking about sexual trauma, I think we speak from a place of, well, you have a sexual trauma, you're always working on this trauma. Well, there's actually times where you reach your goals.
Mm.
Like, you're not necessarily always going to be working on your trauma. You're going to move through these when you do the work, because we are built to heal.
Mm.
Our brains heal, our bodies heal. We
Yes.
just have to, and I think that's an important message for people to know, that we can in fact heal.
And that our bodies the goal of our body is to heal itself.
Yes. Yes.
Think of when you cut yourself, your body is trying to heal itself immediately. So the reason it hurts is it's trying to heal itself. It's all about healing. So our
Yes.
bodies are incredible healing machines. That's absolutely true. I love that point. I was thinking of, in our faith systems, whatever your faith system
Yeah.
is, if you look if you look at it, you see two really important words that come out to me that I think are so important for our listeners to remember, and powerful, powerful concepts and words. One is grace, which is there's nothing you can do to change that love, that gift that you've been given, that beautiful gift of who you are as God's child. There's nothing you can do or say to make it more or less. It is given freely, and it has nothing to do with your performance or anything else. That is a powerful, wonderful message you can take from your spirituality, because that's unconditional love, right?
Yes, it's a beautiful thing, and I think that when you see that, and I know that this might be a little controversial, but our bodies are capable of pleasure for a reason,
Mm.
right? So if you believe that God created us, we're created to experience pleasure just as much as we're created to experience pain, right? And we can find that messaging in our faith systems, in
Mm.
our holy books.
Mhm.
That exists. It's just that oftentimes the teachings focus on the shame and the having to keep your sexuality, in a ball like this. But those messages are as much just as much accurate as any other message that you're going to receive. So look at your faith doctrine truly, like
Mhm,
look
mhm,
rather than just taking a pastor's word for it, or your whomever it is. Like, dig into your scripture. What is being said here? What is being taught about love, like you said, about
mhm.
grace, about connecting with each other as human?
Exactly. It's like Mother Teresa said, if we have no peace, it's because we forget that we belong to each other. That connectedness to
Mhm.
ourselves and our beautiful, miraculous bodies and the God who created it. So grace is a powerful word. The second word I was thinking of is mercy. And that's important too, because sometimes all of us make decisions that we may look back and say, that wasn't the best decision. But we're given mercy over and over in the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Jewish Bible, and in the Torah. There is incredible mercy there. And that mercy has to do with not giving you what you deserve, but giving you what you need rather than what you deserve. And again, another powerful concept that you can carry forward into things like as you're on this journey towards healing. So there's really wonderful, powerful messages in there too. I did have these two questions for you, and I know you kind of saw a little bit ahead of time. I grew up in a purity culture and still feel guilty anytime I experience sexual desire, even in my healthy adult relationship. How can I start to separate normal sexuality from shame-based conditioning? I thought that was a great question.
It is a great question. So if you haven't yet, I would definitely work with a therapist that is trained in trauma, because your body is still experiencing that trauma. It sounds like your brain is ready to move into adult and maybe even understands, healthy adult relationships and healthy adult sexuality, but your body sounds like it's what's holding you back right now. So
Mm.
I would definitely work on with a somatic therapist to help you feel safe in your body. And then that can allow you to have healthy conversations around what you need to start to feel safe while you're actually participating in a sexual relationship or having sexual desire. I I'd love to learn more about what you're experiencing, so, we could talk further about it. It's kind of hard to just answer some of these questions on the cuff, but I would definitely say work with someone who could do some somatic work with you.
And somatic work is working within your body, learning embodiment, and discovering what's going on in your body, and learning to put better things into your body and be present in it. So I agree wholeheartedly. It's great. The second question was this one. Here, hold on. I'm looking over in the other chat. A purity culture taught me my worth is dependent on abstinence. Even now, I still feel damaged goods. I feel unworthy. How can I heal from that sense of brokenness?
Well, thank you so much for asking that question. And, as Dr. Jeff was saying earlier, too, is just these messages are just, they're so powerful. They literally create pathways in our brain, that change us. And when we start to even deviate from that, our brain tells us it's more correct or more comfortable, even to be in the negative messages, right? So when you're talking about healing from this internal sense of brokenness, what I would ask you to do is when you're feeling unworthy, when you're feeling damaged, what is truly coming up for you in those moments? Are there certain words? Are there certain situations? When does that record play for you? I just see it as this record that's just spinning around, and that record gets triggered in different situations or different experiences, or one emotion may come up for you, and then all of a sudden it triggers this feeling of being damaged or unworthy. I would want you to explore that a little bit more. And then what you could do is you can start to, when you notice a pattern, and again, always suggest working with a therapist to help you through some of this, but when you notice that pattern, you start to slowly start to use new words. Okay, right now I'm going through this, and the old script is playing that I'm unworthy, but I am worthy because XYZ. Or this old script is playing because of XYZ, but I'm not in that space anymore. You're creating new pathways over the pathways that were created for you before that have been harming and damaging you.
Yes, you're challenging those negative thoughts and emotions.
Yes.
You're challenging those lies that you're told over and over. You have to challenge them. It's just like the sexual trauma patient. You aren't in that situation anymore. That was then. A lot of times people use the mantra, that was then, this is now. This is not who you are now. So I think challenging that is really, really important. And one of our listeners brought up even more this comment. It's even more challenging, and finding grace becomes so complicated in relation to faith when the love is homosexual love. And that becomes an even more difficult thing, especially if you're from like not a welcoming church, or a space where there's a lot of condemnation around that.
Oh, absolutely. So that was actually my specialty going into theology and first becoming a therapist, was the intersection of Christianity and queerness, because being a queer person myself, being raised in a queer household, I saw what that does, and when people still want to hold on to their faith. So I actually have a lot to say on that topic, but I will spare everyone. And I will say that you can still use these same types of techniques. It's like, especially in Christianity, text gets pulled out and then you're condemned. You have to read and understand the bigger breadth of the text and the culture. And you will see a different picture than what's just quickly yelled at you, because you happen to be a queer person. But this absolutely this harm 100% impacts the homosexual, the queer community. But I would say that these same strategies can help you too. What are your values? What are your beliefs? What do you want to hold on to? There's so many. You can heal from this too and still hold on to faith if that's important to you.
Yeah, and I think, gosh, in this current culture of derision and hatred and othering, creating, that we're not all connected, that these people are others. I think it's so important for us to remember. And if your faith was of that Christian faith, that ultimately there were two messages that Jesus gave us, and there are only two. And he said, there is nothing more important than this: love God and love people, period. Yes. Nothing else matters. So if it all boils down to love, it can't be about othering and hatred and division and things like that. So you are not a mistake. God doesn't make mistakes. No. And so I hope, listeners, that you've heard that message very clearly. So many good strategies, so many good thoughts. I love it. I love it. And you're going to have to come back because there's so much more to talk about.
I know. I feel like we could, and I just love people asking questions and being in dialogue. I think that's so important, and I want to be here for them.
It's totally true. And so I think we've got some really good concepts going. And so along that lines, I would like to go to doing a little bit of a closing centering exercise like I do, and just get people into that space, because for us to work on and talk about, I think Vic is going to bring that up in a second. Let's see. Yes, that's fine. You can be in on this one too. This is our closing exercise, but okay. You've heard, listeners, you have heard a powerful conversation about healing from the wounds of religious trauma, period, and reconnecting with your beautiful, miraculous, authentic, embodied self. Let's take a moment now to come back to your center, to return to the sacredness within you that God incarnated into you, to return to that. If it feels comfortable, you can gently close your eyes. Get in a comfortable position where your feet are on the floor, you're laying down, whatever's comfortable, and gently close your eyes. Take a slow, deep breath in through your nose and exhale gently through your mouth. This is what we mean when we talk about breath work. Those slow inhale in and slow exhale out, that's one way. Some people hold it at the top for a certain amount of counts. Some people hold it at the bottom for a certain amount of counts. You can do it so many ways, but breath work is incredibly powerful. For now, we're just going to do slow, deep breaths in and slow, gentle exhale out. In your nose, out your mouth. Feel your feet or your body supported by the ground or chair or couch beneath you. Notice your support. That support is steady and unchanging. Bring one hand to your heart and the other one to your abdomen. As you breathe, imagine warmth and compassion flowing between your hands, connecting your heart and your core. You may silently say to yourself, I am whole. I am whole. My body is not my enemy. My body is not my enemy. My body is my home. My body is my home. My body and my sexuality are miraculous and beautiful. I am worthy of love and belonging, and I am more than enough. Let your breath be your anchor, steady, kind, and yours. With every exhale, let it go. Just relax. Peace. When you're ready, gently open your eyes, bringing this grounded presence and self-compassion, grace, mercy to yourself, and put that into the rest of your day as you move forward. Vic, let's talk about what's up next week on Dr. Jeff Talks About Sex and Intimacy.
Sexual intimacy is so much more than penetration. In this special panel episode, Dr. Jeff is joined by two leading experts, Dr. Susan Kellogg-Spott, renowned women's health and sexual medicine specialist, and Alicia Williams, licensed professional counselor and certified sex therapist. They engage in a vibrant discussion about the blend of art and science inherent in outer course. They explore non-penetrative sex basics, offering creative ways for couples to connect. Outer course enhances intimacy, reduces pressure, and expands pleasure for everyone. This episode offers fresh insights on redefining sex and provides practical tips for satisfying and playful experiences. Join us on October 28th at 7 p.m. Central Time to learn more.
Vic, you always do an amazing job with those videos. And I love, you made us look good, Susan and I and Alicia, in that those pictures that look like our heads on the whatever. It was good. But anyway, so please join us. We're really going to go over the basics. We're going to dive into outer course. So, if you've ever learned about sex and intimacy, you're going to learn about it with this panel. But tonight and today and whenever you're joining us, thank you, Ann, so much for unpacking those challenging topics. And you did such a beautiful job of balancing it all. You had kind of asked in the beginning what way I wanted you to lean into this and how you wanted to move through. And you couldn't have done a better job. I really, really enjoyed every minute of it. So thank you.
Dr. Jeff, thank you.
And so, I don't know about you, but is there any special message you'd like to leave our listeners with all of this that we've said to them this evening?
Yeah.
Think about it for a second, and I'll say mine, and then you say yours. How about that?
Yes, that's great.
Listeners, I hope you realize through this conversation that you are beautifully and miraculously made exactly as you are. And I hope you learn to turn that grace and mercy and self-compassion that you give others on yourself. If a friend was going through what you were going through, how would you speak to them? How would you treat them? How would you comfort them? Do that to yourselves because you are worthy and you are enough. And we're so glad you joined us. Ann, what would you like to say?
Oh, that was beautiful. You stole some of my stuff. Piggybacking off of what you said, I do want to say and remember those thoughts that come into your head sometimes that are negative thoughts, those thoughts are not you. Those thoughts are based on systems that have harmed you, whatever those systems may be, and take the time to learn who you are outside of those systems, because you are beautiful, you are wonderful, and you are made just right. This is not about being a perfect person walking down the street, because none of us are perfect people walking down the street, but we are all worthy of love, giving, and receiving.
So true. If you want to be perfect, you can never be present. So presence over perfection.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes.
Thank you so much, listeners. You're what this is all about. We appreciate it. Have a good one.
Dr. Jeff talks about sex.